Nobody drinks ayahuasca for the taste. I can tell you right now, what it tastes like is cough medicine mixed with battery acid and mud. No, they drink it so they can find themselves, and people will fly all over the world to Peru so they can have a guzzle on it. Ayahuasca is a gunky plant-based liquid that is brewed in old water bottles, so it comes with a delicious side of microplastics. But it primarily contains two ingredients. DMT is the psychoactive substance within it. You've probably heard of that if you clicked on this video. It's used recreationally in lots of different parts of the world, and it leads to awesome stories like I lived for 50 years as a chair, and here's what it taught me about B2B sales. The other main ingredient is MAOIs, also known as otherwise known as monoamine oxidase inhibitors. What they basically do is turn off your stomach enzymes that process DMT, and that stops your own body from destroying the psychoactive before you get to the good bit. Put these two ingredients together, and shamans in South America consider it to be a sacred medicine, a way of becoming enlightened, a way of gaining insights from a realm beyond our own, a spiritual plane, something beyond our mortal coil. And the more you do it, the further it will take you. There are levels to this game. Unfortunately, I personally never reached those higher levels, but I found it was a pretty groovy time. And I came into it with some pretty clear expectations. Ayahuasca comes with a serious reputation most places in the world. It is viewed as the peak of spirituality, the peak of wellness culture, the final boss of, white dudes with dreads. And I think the mystique plays a pretty big role here. When you're told there is a mysterious liquid that only the shamans in Peru's mountains are allowed to have, and it's gonna solve all of your problems, all of your issues in life, of course some people are gonna get drawn to that. It's a natural progression from journaling to meditating to ice baths to throwing up in a bucket. And the whole thing just has that wellness aura to it. Ayahuasca retreats are generally in the middle of the jungle, surrounded by nature, and it's all about reconnecting with yourself. And it just kind of goes hand in hand with some of that other stuff. And it's not a stretch to say that someday corporate retreats are going to go from golf trips to tripping balls. And then, and only then, will I get a job. But ayahuasca is genuinely seen by many outside of the communities that actually make it as a cure-all for all of life's problems. Have you just had a nasty divorce? Have some ayahuasca. Are you having a midlife crisis? Have some ayahuasca. Are you making YouTube videos at the age of 29? Whatever the individual reason, it all boils down to kind of the same thing, that by having this medicine, you'll be able to peer into a world beyond. You'll be able to access information that you didn't previously have. You'll be able to look into the matrix and see what's on the other side and start making some good decisions. But this puts a lot of pressure on people who go out there to do this stuff, to come back with some big revelation, a reformation, to just change their life in some kind of way. I mean, these ceremonies can rack up thousands of dollars if you do them over the course of multiple days. And that's not including flights or accommodation or just the emotional toil it takes to actually get to the point where you're ready to do this stuff. Of course, you're going to want something groundbreaking from it. I heard about one person who did a multiple day ayahuasca ceremony retreat thing, and then like a month after he got home to the United States, he adopted an 8-year-old. But with all of these preconceptions in mind, the knowledge that this might change my life forever, that I might be forever spiritually reborn by ayahuasca, I did what any smart person would do. I found a crusty old shopfront in the city of Cuzco surrounded by skewered guinea pigs and alpaca steaks, and I booked on my trip to be enlightened. When you book onto a last-minute ayahuasca ceremony, you don't actually get told very much. They tell you that you need to not drink alcohol for a few days, you need to not eat processed meats for a few days, and you need to figure out every single thing that's wrong in your life so you can decide which of those that you want to heal. After a few days of following those rules, we got drove out to a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere where we were introduced to 3 shamans, and none of them spoke any English, and if they did speak Spanish, they didn't want to speak it to me. There was then a lot of waiting around this farmhouse while they set everything up. And I say they set everything up, not the shamans. The shamans had assistants who were running around doing all of the bitch work, getting stuff ready. The shamans were very busy scrolling TikTok and eating Fruit Loops. But all of this legwork at the start was to set up for an initial cleansing ceremony at sunset, and that was to get the vibes right, make sure everyone was on a good wave before the main ayahuasca ceremony. And during this, they rubbed a dead goat all over each of us, and I don't know who told them I'm into that. And after this, the 3 of us doing the ceremony were brought into a big shed where each of us had our own mattress and sleeping bag. It was very glamorous. At this point, everybody who'd paid for the ceremony and the shamans had a big old glug of the good stuff. And at the hour mark, I did start to feel something. I wasn't full-blown tripping, but I had the, like, whoosh visual effect going. And the person who I was with just couldn't stop laughing. Now comes the role of one of the shamans. They sort of guide your trip using different noises. So they sing kind of like a Mongolian throat singer. It's a bit like an old car motor that won't start. And they like bang gongs and drums and stuff. And it sort of increases and decreases the tempo of the trip. And I think the first point where I knew that something was beginning to take effect was when they banged the gong and I could like see sound waves coming from the other side of the room towards me. And I thought, oh yeah. We're getting somewhere. But this is the point where things kind of took a turn. So the person I was with who had been laughing started to have a very much not good time. And it was a good thing the assistants were there, and one of them was a nurse, and they're on hand for these type of situations, but it didn't look like fun. And I haven't even mentioned the third paying customer who was on the other side of the room to me at this point, but they did not move for the entire time. They were Nosferatu'd the fuck up in their sleeping bag. Didn't see them move an inch for the entire ceremony. And while all of this is going on, I was just kind of sat cross-legged on my mattress, not really feeling anything. So at this point, the assistants came over and decided to drug me some more, consensually. But that really got things going. And I'll be real, it was kind of how I imagined it would be. It was a lot of those like Aztec pattern, colory visuals that you see in like ayahuasca Pinterest boards. And it is a lot like that. I like dogs. I think they're fun little guys. I like the way they run around. I like their cute little faces. I like how happy they are and how they're always running around. And I think during my trip, the only breakthrough that I had in any meaningful sense is when the words, "be the dog," appeared in front of me in sort of like huge word art typographics, and it just sort of floated around in my vision for a while. And my brain instinctively knew what that meant. It meant that I like dogs because they're happy, I like them because they're energetic, I like them because they don't get too down for too long, and if I like those things in a dog, then I should be the dog. And so I guess I kind of did get something from my ayahuasca experience, because that is a phrase that I still sometimes think of now when I'm being a bit grumpy or miserable. After that, this went on for a few more hours. It was just a lot more of those Aztec colory visuals, and then it was time to purge. To throw up in the bucket. Except I didn't. I just kind of spat in it loads of times. It was pretty gross. And I'm convinced to this day it's because my liver was too powerful. And eventually after this, and then just lying around for a bit longer, it was like coming to from a really weird sleep. I sat up and felt a lot more sober. I mean, you can see from this photo that I definitely wasn't sober, but I was the last person to stumble outside, and the shamans were already sat back around their table eating more Fruit Loops, and they gave me an apple. And it was the best damned apple I've ever eaten in my fucking life. I still remember this apple so vividly. It was really sweet. It was really crunchy. I could not get enough of this apple. I ate the entire goddamn core, and I was thinking, I need to eat more apples. So I guess that was my other revelation. Anyway, after this, one of the ayahuasca-up shamans drove us back into town. I was not very worried because I assume that's kind of like having one beer and driving when you do it every day. And then to unwind after a big day of drugs, we watched the movie Madagascar, which would have been great, but because I was still kind of high, I found the visuals really, really scary. Ayahuasca has been used by communities in South America for at least 1,000 years, but some oral traditions put it way further back than that, more like sort of like 5,000 years. It's safe to say that real shamans know what they're doing. They know what ayahuasca can help with. They know what it can't help with. They view it as a sacred medicine. They've been doing this for generation after generation. This isn't some scam that they just came up with to trick backpackers out of money. And just to put those timeframes into perspective, penicillin, which is now an absolute cornerstone of Western medicine, has existed for about 100 years and has only been in widespread usage for around 80 years, or so saith Wikipedia. Now, do I think that shamans are accessing a different dimension when they take this medicine, that they are accessing a spiritual world that is usually inaccessible to humans, but you need to take this specific combination of plants in order to gain that knowledge? No. I think that they are flooding their brains with lots of different chemicals that fundamentally alter how we then perceive what is actually reality on a temporary basis. And this can lead to new and interesting thought processes. Of course it can. Or maybe you just get a reminder that you really love dogs. But ultimately, I don't think it's a million miles away from how you might be more inclined to text an ex after you've had 5 beers. Substances change how we process information and how we perceive the world around us. They make us think and act differently. And ayahuasca is a combination of 2 pretty damn potent substances. Personally, I do think ayahuasca can be really beneficial. And if you've had an amazing, life-changing revelation by taking it, then pop off, king. My main issue is when it is pushed as some sort of cure-all that should be taken in any situation, and it will always make your life way, way better, and it's gonna fix all of your problems, because it won't, and it can actually be pretty dangerous. I briefly mentioned that one of the people I was with had a pretty bad experience with ayahuasca, and that prompted me to do some research in humanity's bastion of knowledge, Reddit. And I found that a lot of people have had a really, really bad time by taking this drug. And for every one story I heard about a groundbreaking revelation that made their life better, there was another trip report about someone who was followed by shadow people for 2 weeks, or who had a really visceral and physical reaction to the stuff at the ceremony themselves, and the whole thing was just really, really traumatic for them. And of course, this is not medical literature, but I thought it was really interesting qualitative data. In the same way, I wouldn't recommend that one of my friends who was having a mental breakdown do 6 tabs of acid and sit in a room for 7 hours. I wouldn't recommend they do ayahuasca either. In places like Peru, ayahuasca sits in a really unique ceremonial and cultural context. It's been used for generations, whereas in other countries, DMT is a much more controlled substance because it can be quite dangerous. And I think that is the huge difference here. Because a community with generations of experience using something and seeing how it affects different people in different situations is worlds apart from a Western backpacker reading one blog post and deciding, yeah, ayahuasca is what's going to make my kids love me again. I think there is a genuine chance it will change your life for the better. Maybe you will have an incredible, groundbreaking revelation and you will be happy forever. Maybe that one guy really did want to adopt an 8-year-old and ayahuasca showed him that. I think there's also an incredibly real chance it'll do absolutely nothing for you, or it's going to make whatever you're dealing with a hell of a lot worse. Ultimately, I'm glad I did it. No, I don't think it has saved my soul or my spirit or whatever, and I think that treating it as a big spiritual reset button is pretty damn stupid. So I guess the moral of this story is that you should not do drugs unless you really, really want to.